439 hash. That's star 439 hash. And today, you're picking option 2 for TV3. It'll cost you 5 cedis to play, and you too could be winning some cold, hard cash going straight onto your mobile device. So please play as many times as possible this morning. Again, it is star 439 hash. Star 439 hash. Again, option 2. Play as many times as possible. Make sure your Monday is super, super exciting. You could be getting 1,000 Ghana cedis. No bend, no curve. It's going onto your mobile device. So do please keep on playing. And for those of you who are avid watchers on the socials, do keep your thoughts, your comments, and your questions coming this morning. Hashtag New Day, hashtag Big Issue. Now, today we'll be focusing on government's recent decision to indefinitely suspend the controversial 1 Ghana cedi fuel levy, originally set to take effect on June 16, 2025. That's today. Now, this levy was introduced to help tackle Ghana's mounting energy sector debt, but rising global and oil prices, as well as geopolitical tensions, have forced a rethink. I'm sure you're keeping abreast with what's happening with Israel and Iran. Now, the suspension offers temporary relief to consumers already feeling the pinch of high cost of living, while sparking calls from the minority of Parliament to be recalled, from the minority for Parliament to be recalled and for the levy to be scrapped altogether. Let me introduce my panel for the morning, and then we will get talking. In studio is Andrew Apia Dankwa. He's a spokesperson, Movement for Change, also private legal practitioner. Andrew, hello, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How was your weekend?
It was great, quiet, very quiet, and a bit reflective. You know,
Okay.
It was Father's Day, and I'm a proud father myself, and it's one of the, in my opinion, the most important role God Himself gave me. So for me, it was a very reflective and very enjoyable weekend. And,
all right.
And I wish to take this opportunity to wish all fathers and potential fathers a happy Father's Day.
Very important. We need to encourage our potential fathers as well. Also in studio, Hamza Suhini Saibu is private legal practitioner, also part of the NDC's comms team. Hamza, I think this is the first time that we're actually meeting or at least interacting. Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning, and of course, good morning to your production team and my senior counsel in the studio, Apia Dankwa. Well, like he indicated, it's just to wish every father and a potential father a happy Father's Day, though belated, but I think that the most important thing is the lessons that we must all espouse as fathers and be an inspiration to many more young people who also are hoping to be fathers one day. And most importantly, be an example to our children so that when they look at us, they can begin to have an idea of the kind of future they want to pursue in terms of their professional lives, and even when it comes to their social standard in society, their moral uprightness and everything inclusive. So clearly, for me, it has more to do with that, because I was fortunate, or were favored, to have a very understanding dad. Even under difficult traditional circumstances, he still found time to engage. We enjoyed serious friendship with him when he was alive. May his soul rest in peace. And for many of us, especially those of us who are his kids, we feel that to a very large extent, we are able to get the confidence to express our views because of the kind of upbringing he made available to us. Because even at that tender age, we were fortunate to engage him on topical political issues. That was quite strange.
Even at that tender age?
Yes, and that was quite strange in our society. Because you can imagine, he happened to be the first son of the chief. And growing up in northern Ghana, where if you end up spending most of your time with your kids, your siblings and even your father is likely to think that, come on, why? Why spend time with your kids when you are supposed to be spending time with many other people in society, and that you are pampering their kids, you are spoiling them and stuff like that. We had all kinds of things when we were growing up.
Interesting.
But he still found time. We were his friends. He would close from work as a deputy director of nursing services. We would often meet at his pharmacy around the Chogu area in Tamale, just opposite the VRA substation. We are engaged in all kinds of debates. I remember when I was going to contest for SRC president at Tamale College of Education, and I went to him. He was like, come on, I'm all for it. Gave me all the advice that turned out to be instrumental in securing me victory in that election. So clearly, I am always proud, and I just hope and pray I can be that example to my kids. That's my greatest objective now.
Hamza, thank you for that opening, and there's nothing like a father's encouragement. Also joining in on the conversation this morning is Richmond Roxon. He's the head of communication at the Ministry of Energy and Green Transition. Richmond, hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Hello, and good morning to your cherished viewers and panelists in studio.
Thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. We do have a lot to discuss with you, and I'm sure you'll be able to put some more flesh on the bones as we explore the topic further. So we know that there's been an indefinite suspension of the 1 cedi fuel levy. Can you clarify for us exactly what the reasoning behind that is?
Ellen, you would recall that a few weeks ago, the government passed the Energy Sector Levy Amendment Act, Act 1141, which amended Act 1135, with the consolidation of the energy sector shortfalls and debt repayment. That amendment flows from the original ESLA, which was passed in 2015, amended in 2017 by the previous administration with the introduction of street levy, further amended in 2019 and 2021 with the introduction of sanitation and pollution levy. What the government sought to do was to introduce additional levy on petroleum products, particularly 1 cedi on petrol and diesel. Kerosene remains unchanged, it's still 73 pesos, and to ensure that enough revenue is raised to deal with some challenges in the power sector, particularly the procurement of liquid fuels, which originally does not form part of the electricity tariff structure, and also for the reserve budget. The government had not taken this decision and rather looked at adding the cost of liquid fuels to the electricity tariff structure. Prices would have gone up, or tariffs would have gone up by about 68%. That's why the government introduced the 1 cedi. Implementation was supposed to start on the 9th of June. The OMCs called on government to intervene because they had a number of challenges. The government found their challenges quite legitimate and then shifted the implementation date to 16th, which is today. The government has since then put on the decision to implement the levy because of discussions or consultations with stakeholders, especially looking at the happenings on the global market. You know that there are 3 indicators that we look at when you are determining the price of fuel at the pump. You look at crude oil prices, you look at prices of finished products, as price of diesel and petrol in the international market, and then you look at the exchange rate. The exchange rate has been fantastic. The government has managed it so well. We've moved from about 17 Ghana cedis to 10.22 as of now. And the prices have dropped on the pump from about 16, 17 to 10 or 11, depending on where you purchase your fuel from. This decision on the global market, the geopolitics, what's happening now, has the impact of affecting prices on the international market. What it means is that if crude oil prices go up, which is what we've been witnessing in the last few days, and if finished products also go up, it has the potential of affecting how much we pay at the pump. This is why the government has decided, through the executive and presidency, has directed that the energy ministers, energy and finance ministers should monitor the situation to ensure that the gains that have been made within the period, those gains are not eroded. So basically, the government has taken this decision to look at the factors and how it is going to impact on the people of Ghana to ensure that a good decision is made, which at the end of the day will not go to affect the people of Ghana.
Right. Thank you for that foundation, Richmond. So how then does the ministry plan on cushioning customers, or how do you plan to balance this cushioning of consumers against the need to address our energy sector woes? We talk about the debts in that sector. How are we going to address that now?
Yeah, fortunately, what the government has been doing when it comes to the debt is to tackle all the problems simultaneously. There are structural reforms that are being for which over the period, if you observe, you'll see that it's very good. For example, in the last 2 months, the grade has been fairly stable as compared to what we inherited in January, February, March. There's a vast improvement. These are some of the results that we are seeing as a result of policy intervention. When it comes to procurement, the issues, the policy has changed. ECG does not have the procurement policy that they had before. When it comes to revenue mobilization, the government has directed MDAs to deal with the revenue losses where you have a lot of MDAs not paying for electricity consumed. Cabinet has passed that all MDAs should pay for electricity consumed, which means that ECG is going to have more revenue as compared to what it had previously. You also have the private sector participation as well in ECG billing and collection, which the process has started. When it comes to fuel supply, the government is looking at getting more natural gas, which is way cheaper than what we spend on liquid fuels. Once all these improvements are being done, definitely we should see a better energy sector than what we've experienced. It doesn't mean that the issue of liquid fuels has been resolved, but what it means is that the government of Ghana will now have the responsibility to procure fuels to power our thermal plant. It's a difficult decision. It's something that is going to have an impact on our fiscal space, but in the meantime, that will be the option available to government to ensure that liquid fuels are procured. The government's hope is that very soon, this geopolitics that is going on, the impacts will not hit Ghana. They will come to an end as soon as possible, so that the original model which led to the introduction of this once-a-day levy can be implemented.
Certainly. Richmond, you talked about some procurement policy changes when you were referring to some structural reforms that are being embarked on. Can you expand on that a little bit? What exactly is going to be changing as far as ECG's procurement activities are concerned?
Let me give you one example. Over the period, you'll notice that when ECG contract supplies, what they do is that the products are left at the port, and ECG will now have to look for monies to clear the goods or the equipment. That policy has changed. The directive from the minister to ECG is that when you contract any supplier, whatever you are procuring must be delivered to the warehouse of ECG. It must be at the doorstep of ECG. So you go through the process where you have so many containers or so many equipment stuck at the port where ECG is unable to pay for it. The minister has also directed that ECG shares its procurement plan with the ministry, so that the ministry will have an idea the procurement that ECG is engaged in. Over the period, you had a situation where ECG kept procuring non-essential goods. As we speak, ECG, when it comes to, let's say, 2.5 mm cables, ECG has enough stock that can last us for over 15 years. I think that is not sustainable. No business should be able to do that. So those are some of the reforms when it comes to procurement that has been introduced to ensure that you have a more efficient energy sector, as we've seen, better than what we've seen in previous years.
Now, yesterday we saw a press release coming from the Minority Caucus in Parliament, and they describe efforts by government as being a trial and error approach. How do you respond to that?
It's quite unfortunate. Sometimes when you create the problems and others are trying to solve it, you should just take a step back and not engage in needless politicking. You have supervised over the sector for 8 years. This government has been in power for 4 months. The problems in the sector, were they created by the government, this current government? No. The government inherited 80 billion worth of debt in the power sector alone related to generation. The government has inherited debt when it comes to suppliers. The policy of not including liquid fuel, as part of the cost build-up was a policy by the previous administration. So when you have created all these problems and that you have a new administration that is trying to solve it, you don't antagonize the administration by engaging in all these press conferences no, you don't do that. What you do is to lend your support to the government and the minister to ensure that the problems in the sector are dealt with. Whether today, what has been their proposal when it comes to procurement of liquid fuel? What has been their proposal? The proposal that we currently have is to look at the windfall, which the government is implementing, look at the windfall, the gains that have been made with the support of the people of Ghana. That is why the government keeps saying that it is a difficult but a necessary decision. Let's not derail or let's not introduce needless politicking to destroy what at the moment will be the best decision to solve the problem that we have in the sector.
Interesting there that you say this is an antagonistic move. The minority says that they're only looking out for the everyday Ghanaian and that these issues should have been explored further. We talked about consultation, a lack of stakeholder engagement. Is there some vindication there? Should there have been more conversations before this was thrust onto the people of Ghana?
Ellen, the ministry had wide consultations before the passage of this bill. The minister engaged in consultations during the passage of the bill, and the minister still engages in consultation even after the passage of the bill. In fact, go to the statement released by COPEC on the 9th. If you have the statement, you can read it. COPEC said that they are grateful for the constructive consultations between the Ministry of Energy and Green Transition, the Ministry of Finance, and government agencies. Only on Friday or Thursday, even the GRE had consulted. You can call COPEC, they will confirm it. And you'll notice that even some of the groups that had the view from the start that the consultations were low, most of them have endorsed the policy. You can move from GPR to the drivers because would you prefer to pay 68% more in your electricity tariff, or you want to sacrifice and support the government with 1 Ghana cedi on a liter of fuel to ensure that you have stable electricity supply? That is the question, and that is where we are. And the engagement showed clearly that people prefer to pay the 1 cedi, especially when it wasn't an additional cost. There was a windfall of about 5 cedi that the government said, sacrifice with us. They are both stakeholders. Give us 1 cedi, which will still leave you with 4 cedi, to ensure that we deal with the power challenges once and for all.
Certainly. And Richmond, finally, how exactly is the ministry monitoring the situation to decide when and if the levy will be reintroduced?
In fact, the monitoring has been ongoing every single day. The minister has briefing. He monitors himself the international prices for crude oil and also finished product. Every single day, the government is working so hard on the exchange rate. So the monitoring has been ongoing. What the president has said is that definitely once now you have a new development, which is the conflict between Iran and then Israel, which has the potential of affecting prices of fuel because Iran is a major oil country. That monitoring must be enhanced to ensure that if there are any challenges that it poses, any threat that it poses to the people of Ghana, that threat will be handled by government. And it is important to note that in this pricing window, fuel prices are down. It's important to put that out, that I'm measuring about 2 to 3% down as a result of the government intervention. And the government was always clear from day one that, yes, it is not fixated on taking levies and taxes. No, it is as a result of the peculiar nature of this challenge. That is why the 1 cedi had to be introduced. And that if at any point in time the government needs to review its decision, looking at the factors prevailing at the time, the government will do it. The suspension shows that the government listens, the government pays attention, and that the government is not intransigent. It's a government that, if the factors are different and it will pose a threat to the people of Ghana, why not? Stay your decision, look at it as a whole again, and then if you have to roll out on a different day, you do it to ensure that the people of Ghana are your priority at all material points in time.
Richmond, thank you so much for your time this morning and for joining us on the program. Richmond Roxon is Head of Communication, Ministry of Energy and Green Transition. But let me also say good morning and a warm welcome to Dr. Bernard Tutu Boahin, Political Strategist, UEW. Doc, hello, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing good.
I hope you had a good weekend.
Yes, the weekend was gracious. We thank God for lives, His mercy.
Absolutely. A belated Happy Father's Day to you as well. Andrew, I want to start off with you on this conversation. The last time we spoke, we had just gotten wind of this levy amendment bill. As the minority said, it happened at the stroke of midnight whilst we were all sleeping. We woke up and we were to pay a cedi on every litre of fuel that we purchased. Now, we do know that government has suspended this levy indefinitely as it responds to the, shall I say, brewing crisis, given the geopolitical tensions. The minority says that this is a trial and error approach to governance. What are your thoughts? First, one more time on the levy itself, its purpose, and its suspension.
So, let me wish your lovely viewers a good morning. It's been a while since I saw my brother, Hamza. Always a pleasure sharing a platform with him.
Absolutely.
And Prof here, it's good seeing him. We can have a Father's Day, Prof.
Thank you.
And hopefully we can all have a very good discussion. I think last week, over the past week, we've said enough about our thoughts on the Dumso levy. I think my personal view was that it was a bitter pill, but it was a bitter pill that had to be swallowed. For me, I think government ought to be commended, not criticized, with the position they've taken on the suspension of the levy, and I think the suspension gives credence to or affirms government's commitment to reduce the burden on Ghanaians, and I think they ought to be commended rather than being castigated, especially by the minority, because really this government is showing that they are in tune and they're empathetic to the plight of the ordinary Ghanaian. And indeed, I think they've expressed massive competence to anticipate hardship and to show that they are standing with us and to suspend this levy. It's sad that at a time when Ghanaians should be expressing some hope, because for a very long time, attitude of government, in my opinion, has been, and when I say government here, it's not necessarily MPP in this government, but government in general, has been that they tend to work against the interests of the people. And they made some of us question whether or not this democracy really was for the people, as per the definition. In that light, I'm really disappointed with the position of the minority.
You say really disappointed?
Really, extremely disappointed. I'm extremely disappointed, and I don't know. Instead of they wearing sackcloth and placing ashes on their heads and going around begging Ghanaians to forgive them for the evil they caused us when they were in power over the past 8 years, they have the cockroach audacity.
Who's the cockroach audacity?
The audacity of a cockroach. You know, the cockroach is one of the most audacious animals. Cockroach. When You know, cockroach knows that as in when we see them, we'll kill them. The cockroach will wait. When you have a vista, the cockroach will show up. That is audacious. It's beyond boldness. The minority have the cockroach audacity.
On that cockroach audacity point, Andrew, bear with me so that we can share with our viewers what exactly they've been saying. I'll summarize it and then we can come back to that point. But let me also say good morning to Mr. Duncan Amwa, Executive Director, Chamber of Petroleum Consumers, COPEC. Duncan, hello, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Yes, we'll come back to you, so please hold tight for me. But if we can get the minorities' press release on the screens, I'll summarize very quickly and then find out really from Andrew why he says that this is not in the right direction. So you're responding then, Andrew, to that press release. It enumerates a number of reasons why the minority caucus in Parliament believe that this approach by government is a trial and error approach. Now, the key points from that press, again, if we can get it up on the screen, we can all follow along with exactly what the minorities gripe with the government's approach to this levy is. Now, they say that the levy implementation was postponed indefinitely by government just days before it was to take effect. Andrew, they say this constitutes poor planning. The minority also argues that the levy is an unnecessary burden. They've said that previously, and that this could worsen transportation and food prices. They go on to criticize the government's justification for the levy, citing global oil market instability. And they also say that that should not be a reason or a factor that government even speaks to because of what they had to say during the COVID-19 Russia-Ukraine rhetoric season. Although I must admit that confuses me a little bit, but we'll come back and expand on that. They also emphasize that the previous NPP administration maintained stable power supply without such punitive taxes. Now, regarding the timing and fuel prices, the minority says that the levy has not yet been applied, as we know, because it's been postponed pending further communication. They say that that should have been done before. And they also say the short-term price drop weakens the argument for an immediate levy on fuel, as the economic burden on consumers would increase despite falling prices. We do know about the geopolitical tensions, which could have a devastating effect on our fuel prices. Andrew, now that we've set that context for our viewers, you say this is still audacious. It's still...
No, it's not. I'm not saying it's just audacious. I think I'd say they have the cockroach. They have the cockroach, emphasis on the cockroach, audacity to come to pen this press release. You understand? When one, the problems in the energy sector should largely be placed on their heads. Largely, it should be placed on their heads. And I think I made a lot of arguments last week. One, when you give the history of this Energy Sector Levy Act, it was Mahama that introduced it in 2015. You understand? Rigged in by 2020 almost $5 billion. At the time when the Energy Sector Levies Act was enacted, our energy debt stood around $2 billion. Now, when they came in, they decided to collateralize about 8 billion of the monies raised, and then rather issued what's called bonds. Now, they failed to apply the monies they've raised to solve the problem. They use it as they pleased. You understand? Secondly, they then, with the aid of the World Bank, did the Energy Sector Recovery Program. The focus of the program was, first of all, to deal with the fundamental issues that created the debts in the first place. And they projected that if they implemented the program, by 2023, the energy sector would be financially viable. That's what they said. And having done this program, they fundamentally failed to implement the energy sector, the activities under the Energy Sector Recovery Program. And they supervised this massive debt that the energy sector is bedeviled with. You understand? Now, because of that, they do not have that moral right. But beyond that, You understand? Let's go into what they are saying in their press release, because the devil is always in the detail. Now, let's go to the paragraph 2. Now, in the paragraph 2, and with your permission, I'm going to read.
Certainly.
So we consider it thoroughly reprehensible and profoundly hypocritical that the very government which ruthlessly castigated the period Nana New Patriotic Party administration under His Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo for attributing Ghana's economic challenges to external factors, namely the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine conflict, has now presently reversed course to cite the ongoing Middle Eastern crisis as justification for crude oil price volatility, thereby necessitating this postponement. This represents a stark contradiction, particularly given that President Akufo-Addo's administration successfully implemented comprehensive economic recovery program. Jesus Christ. We were in Ghana. Did you feel that over the last 8 years, any comprehensive economic recovery program was implemented? You see, I'm not an economist, but I know that Economy 101 says that the safest place to put your monies is in government bonds. That fundamental economic principle was breached for the first time in this country under the watch of Nana Addo. They actually took monies from people's pockets. And here, the case in point is the debt restructuring, the domestic debt restructuring, where people's, in fact, do they know the number of people who have lost their lives as a result of this? We all witnessed, what's it called, old men, pensioners, who were supposed to be relaxing their homes, led by a former CJ, you understand, having to demonstrate because their pensions had been dissipated by the government of Nana Addo. His Excellency Dr. Bawumia told us that you can do all the propaganda in the world. If the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. When they were leaving government, what was the exchange rate? They came to meet the exchange rate at 4 point something when they were leaving. In fact, what was the cost of living under their watch? In fact, one of the reasons why we needed and called for a change was because of the manner in which their leadership led to a fundamental loss of credibility in the economy of this country. And they're talking about what program? They're talking about a government that touted economic transformation and strangely decided to spend 5 billion cedis on NAPCO and just 400 million on 1D, 1F. Against all the corruption. So what are they talking about? Are they staying in a different Ghana than we are? That's when, what's called, around, before the COVID, fuel price was what? A liter was about 4 cedis. By the time they were leaving office, it went as, in fact, there was a period when it went as high as 22 Ghana cedis. Around
2022.
So what economic program did they implement? You see, some of this is as if the minority deliberately wants to get people angry.
Really?
I'm telling you. No, listen, I'm saying that what economic program? In fact, we are asking what maybe I don't know.
So in fact, when there was a presser held by the NPP, Kojo Oppong Nkrumah mentioned this recovery efforts, they say in 2024. So maybe we were yet to really get into the throes of said economic recovery, and then the people of Ghana did not give them the opportunity to fully implement this rollout 2024 plan.
In fact, whereas you have a government that is saying that because of our anticipation that the crisis in Iran and Ukraine can impact
Iran and Israel.
Can impact our livelihoods. We are going to suspend the implementation of a tax that could potentially add more burden on the people. Even though we all know that the levy itself per se was not going to increase the price of fuel at the consumer level. But last week, Prof did some fantastic calculation today. He was continuous. In spite of that, the government said, listen, we anticipate that one of the key components in calculating the price, being the cost of fuel, could go up. And so let's suspend this. Right. What did the NPP do when the war in Russia and Ukraine? They weaponized that war and used that as a justification to add to the economic woes of the people of Ghana. So they shouldn't make that comparison. Then they also go further and say that maintain Ghana's democratic institutions. Jesus Christ. Maintain Ghana's democratic institutions. Was it not Nana Addo who, strangely, in spite of the oath he took to be faithful to Ghana, decided to appoint people who were perceived to be members of the New Patriotic Party onto the EC, did you know the impact of that action on these democratic institutions? Because, you see, to maintain this democracy, to sustain the belief of the people in this democracy, then where you are present and where you are appointing people into positions which demand neutrality, then your burden is just not to appoint anybody at all, but you need to appoint people who can meet the burden on that institution. The burden on the EC is not only to deliver free and fair elections. The burden on the EC is to deliver elections which will be perceived to be free and fair. So immediately you appoint people who are perceived to have any political coloring, then what you are doing is to undermine the integrity of these democratic institutions, and by so doing, undermining the whole democracy as the preferred system of choice by the people of Ghana. So what are they talking about? Did he not see the last Afro Barometer report?
In just a minute for me.
Well, because of the Koshoko leadership Nanado gave an MPP. You see, it's sad that they keep on talking about the New Patriotic Party, because what they are even doing is also destroying the New Patriotic Party, and really where their focus should be to protect the party. Because you see, it is Nanado's government, not a New Patriotic government.
You think that distinction must be made clear?
Yeah, because we vote for the human being. In the system we created, Ghanaians created, executive power is placed in the hands of the individual. All what the political party does is to sponsor. We are not running the Westminster system. So in Mahama's case, it is Mahama's government, not the NDC government. But because they don't have confidence, they always want to hide behind the credibility of the party to do whatever they want to do. By so doing, destroying also the party. You understand? So it's like they are taking Mickey at us. Because if there's one of the biggest reasons why we sacked or we didn't vote for Bamia, is because beyond destroying the credibility of the economy, he also destroyed the credibility of political leadership, attacked our democratic institutions. And finally,
yes,
he's saying that, and they delivered transformative infrastructure projects, even whilst, what did they, I just came back from Kumasi over the weekend. In fact, I know the second topic has to do with the death of those unfortunate death of.
That's right.
You see, governments in this country has failed in delivering governance that protects the life of its people by failing to radically deal with the lack of depth of infrastructure in this country. So what are they talking about? They need to be serious. They lack credibility when they were in power. And strangely, they are killing the small credibility they have, even in opposition. And we should not sit down and allow them to take this Mickey at us. You see, to end.
30 seconds, please.
Yeah. Government must always be to serve the interests of the people. Now, government also includes parliament. So the minority, they are also government. You understand? And they must, I think there's a need for these people to rededicate, reaffirm their commitment to the principles and ideals of democratic governance. You understand? It should not be parochial. They have become too parochial. And their focus is just, let's lie, let's do anything just to win power. Ghanaians are watching. Ghanaians are watching. And if they are serious, they should help government. They should tell us we are in 2025. This is the time for us to pull together to give credible leadership that will reaffirm the fidelity of the people of this country towards this democratic system that we have governed. As things stands now, they are fighting and they are threat to democracy because of their lack of integrity. And nobody should take them serious.
All right, Andrew, thank you so much for that. I'm sure I'll be able to get your final bite before we move on to our next topic. And we also have Duncan Amo, Executive Director, COPEC, on the line. Mr. Amo, again, hello, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me once again.
And we're hoping to also see you on our screens. Are you able to position and turn on your camera so we can have the conversation?
I could do that in a few minutes.
All right, certainly.
I will. Yes. Sure.
We'd like to see you. So please position yourself. Let me come back in studio, and as you position yourself to turn on your camera, I'll come to you with some questions. Hamza, let me come to you then. The suspension of this levy, you say, is because you're watching or shall I say, testing the temperature of what's going on geopolitically, as well as other factors. But this has been greeted with some very strong words by the minority. They say it's a trial and error approach to governance. I want your reaction to that.
I've missed this panel. My brother, thank you for opening the fireworks. Anyway, Helen, you see, good morning to our cherished viewers once again. For me, there's the tendency for us to miss the whole picture, especially if you want to throw in the NPP's presser into the mix. One significant thing is happening, and that should occupy our thoughts. And basically, that has to do with the kind of leader we queued to give our mandate to on the 7th of December, 2024. And that is His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama. It has always been my position that in this country, we take for granted in taking our decisions, especially when it comes to who leads us, we fail to do deeper reflection and assessment of the personalities who run to become president. And many of us, maybe largely because of our educational backgrounds, have made it a point to follow those who seek to lead us and to understand these personalities. And I think that to an appreciable level, I can say, seated in this chair, that I have a fair idea of the kind of person Ghanaians gave their mandate to and voted for. This is not a president who waits to deal with effects of bad decisions. This is a president who has demonstrated incredible foresight when it comes to the leading of this country. Not just even in his second term now, but did so as president in his first term. Remember his approach to doom so, like my brother indicated earlier. When successive governments decided to be engaged in the usual politics of addressing only the effects, he accepted responsibility, dealt with it head on, and as a result of that, invested heavily in the energy sector that the NPP, upon assumption of office, decided to declare as excess capacity, largely pioneered by the visionary leadership of His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama, because he understood that there was an annual increment in demand when it comes to electricity. So at that point, it was not enough for him to just resolve it, but he needed to plan ahead. Again, we are dealing with a president, even before he was sworn into office, understood clearly that when we talk about economic recovery, it goes beyond the lectures Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and co. were holding in our universities, tying themselves only to economic fundamentals. President Mahama understood that there's no way you can recover your economy without taking a look at the political effects or the effects political decisions would have on economic fundamentals. And he knew that Ghana found itself in a very difficult situation because our president had carelessly, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, accused the like of Burkina Faso of hiring the Wagner forces, and so created a situation that made it practically impossible for us to engage in a diplomatic fashion with our neighbors. So President Mahama, even before his swearing in, decided to jet off to African countries, trying to reposition the image of this country, because he understood that no matter the economic policies he championed as president, if he fails to send that political signal out there to our neighbors, to African leaders, and especially to the Sahel states, that would be under threat. So he needed to satisfy that leg of politics that undoubtedly would have an effect on our economic performance. And he swung straight into action by those visitations to build that kind of acceptable relationship with our neighbors. He didn't stop there. He proceeded to single out the Sahel state and even proceeded to appoint an envoy to be directly responsible to their activities, because he appreciates that economically there seem to be that interlinkages. So this is a president with a foresight. And immediately that was done, he led his finance minister and they presented one of the most far-reaching budgets to the good people of this country. That became the basis of our recent economic recovery successes that we are choking, and we are even being modest about celebration, because you have not seen his government jump into organized KNK parties
You want to be
celebrate.
measured with the way in which you
Because
celebrate.
we understand that the work ahead of us is tedious. We understand that the expectations of the Ghanaian people are onwards. And we are being led by a man who understands that it is not just about solving today's problems, but being in a position to make it impossible for us to have to deal with the effects of our failure to holistically address today's problems in the future. So that is the kind of foresight we are talking about. And so for me, yesterday when I woke up to the announcement, I said, lo and behold, this is the President John Dramani Mahama I know. And this is the President John Dramani Mahama we campaigned for. Because he did not wait to begin to feel the impact of the Iranian-Israeli conflict before acting. Because he understood that there were problems with the energy sector. He brought on board a fix that we were convinced that would help resolve the matter. Unfortunately, Iran-Israeli conflict happened. President Mahama didn't have to wait until the next pricing window. He directed his minister responsible for energy and finance to begin modeling the possible impacts of such an attack on the economic fortunes of this country. And I am pretty much convinced, like my brother Richard Roxon has indicated, that it is as a result of that modeling and the possible effect an increment would have even on the exchange rate gains that resulted in the decision of government to suspend same. So Helen, that is the kind of leader we have. That is the kind of change Ghanaians voted for. Proactive leadership. That leadership of foresight and preparing to ensure that you don't unnecessarily burden the Ghanaian people. What more do we need? What more? And you see, as for the NPP, I've always argued, and I tell many of our communicators, say, there's always the tendency, because of the havoc they subjected this country into, there's always a tendency in our bid to respond to them in equal measure. We are likely to come across as being insensitive. So there's always a need for us to create a distinction when we are communicating directly to the good people of Ghana and when we are responding directly to the NPP as a party that took this country for granted in the last 8 years. And that is the reason why I've had to make this distinction, to show you the kind of leader we have and the justification behind this policy. Now, it is important for me to respond. I'm responding directly to the NPP. You see, Helen, there's this tale that everybody growing up in Northern Region knows, that the bat vowed to pee on God Almighty, and so flew to the higher heavens, and in its bid to pee on God, it ended up peeing on itself. That's why anytime the bat pees, the pee actually falls on it. Any young person growing up in Tamale, especially in the northern regions, this tale would not be lost on that person. That is the character of the New Patriotic Party. The New Patriotic Party is in a haste to pee on the National Democratic Congress and His Excellency John Dramani Mahama's government. In their haste, they are rather peeing on themselves. Because when I read the statement, I simply could not believe the hypocrisy and the double standards.
What exactly stood out for you?
How would I respond to them? They are claiming, like my brother said, that Nanado led an economic successful program that eventually led to economic recovery and enhancement of our democratic institutions. Am I right?
Yeah.
Before President Mahama came into office, permit me to read this to you. I think this is very important. You see, we are not saying it. This is what the IMF, if you claim that the economic fundamentals, because we argued from day one that you left us unsustainable debt levels, not only in the energy sector, road sector, cocoa pot, and many other state-owned enterprises. In the energy sector alone, ECG alone, we are having to deal with in excess of 80 billion Ghana cedis. When we were leaving office in 2016, we left them not up to 10 billion. And an ESLA proceeds that generated in excess of 45 billion for them to be able to cater for the energy sector bills. What did they leave us when they were leaving office? Absolutely nothing. In addition to the ESLA that we gave them, they increased ESLA and decided to collateralize it. And in addition to that, they left us in excess of 80 billion ECG debt to manage. This is their record. Now, you are claiming in your press statement that you led an economic recovery program. Listen to what the IMF said in their last review of the NPP's performance. It says, program performance deteriorated markedly at the end of 2024. Physical slippages in the run-up to the elections led to a large accumulation of payables. Inflation exceeded program targets, and several reforms were delayed. This is your record. We are not saying it. It is the IMF. These are your records. Now, but listen to what they said about the government, and led by His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama. Since the beginning of the year, the new authorities have taken bold measures to address policy and reform slippages and ensure achievement of program objectives. This includes enacting a strong budget and public financial management reforms, tightening monetary policy, and adjusting electricity prices. Proactive, responsible leadership. These are the records. We didn't say it. It is said by the IMF. So when they speak, I feel sorry for them, because it is like the lessons Ghanaians wanted them to learn from this humiliating defeat they suffered in the last election is still being lost on them. So it's like being caught in a hole. They have dug themselves into a hole in the last 8 years, and instead of them to be finding innovative ways of coming out, they rather continue to dig themselves further. That is the state of the MPP we find ourselves. Finally,
yes,
they also made reference to the fact that the NDC in opposition claimed that external factors do not have an effect on our economic performance. Another unpardonable lie. And you see, these kinds of deception or lies is the reason why they are where they are. And I will demonstrate to you why that is a lie. We've always been consistent.
In just a minute, then I'll go to
you see, if you followed our communication clearly, we indicated that even before COVID, the economy had shown serious signs of distress. And we made references to the debt to GDP level of about 63%, because we left it at rebase figures at 55.6%. In about 2020, they had moved it to about 63%. Remember, it was about 61% when Ghana was declared HIPIC under President Kufuor. So what that meant was that even under Nanado, by 63%, we had exceeded what led us to HIPIC in the first place. This was the record. You had ballooned public debts before HIPIC from about 120 billion that President Mahama left it to about 256 billion. These were the records, to a point that we argued that it was because of that kind of recklessness that made the country so vulnerable. So you should not be blaming our current state on what? COVID. And I will demonstrate to you, it was not the NDC that said it. Again, it was said by the World Bank country director.
And just in 30 seconds, because we also want to look at how
but Helen, this is important, because we are dealing with a group of fraudsters, and it is important for us to expose them.
How do you say fraudsters?
Yes, they are.
Isn't that too scary for a Monday morning?
You see, please, I think that I'm being even charitable when it comes to this press statement that they have released. That's why I said that it's important for us to create that distinction between the MPP when we are speaking directly to them and the Ghanaian people. And I'm speaking directly to the MPP now. This is the World Bank country director there, Pierre Laporte or something like that. I hope I got the name. He says, Ghana's economy was facing challenges before COVID. World Bank country director. We did not say it. So these are the facts. So when you listen to them, and I feel sorry for them, the likes of Afenyo Makin, you were in charge of ECG as board chairman. Today, you are trying to bury your corruption, your recklessness, your inefficiency under the guise that the only problem with ECG has to do with inefficiency. You guys engage in unhealthy, unethical award of contracts to cronies who even failed to deliver.
Thank you, Hamza, for that.
My goodness, I think that the time has come for us to begin investing
Thank you for that, Hamza.
to account for his role
Hamza, thank you for that. And I will come back
this?
to you so that we can actually speak to the people of Ghana and glean from you what government wants to do to balance our need to cushion ourselves, but also address our energy sector levy debts and also the procurement of liquid fuels. That's something that is still high up on the agenda, I'm sure. So we'll be hearing what solutions government has in store, as well as structural reforms. I think Richmond touched on a few of those, but if we can expand on that, give the people of Ghana some insight into what exactly is going to be done as we've paused this particular levy. But Duncan Amoah is on Zoom this morning. Now we can clearly see him. Mr. Amoah, again, thank you and good morning. How does COPEC receive this news of the indefinite suspension of that levy, 1 Ghana cedi per litre of fuel, especially given the geopolitical tensions that exist presently?
Let me say thank you once again. Good morning. Indeed, COPEC has a body that has had a keen observation for the petroleum downstream and consumer rights and advocacy. We're one of the bodies that initially had kicked against the 1 Ghana cedi levy to be added to fuel, because we have in our history seen a lot of fuel taxes brought on for specifics. Some would come with even sunset clauses. At the end of the day, we are never able to take them off. So it looked as though it was just going to be another line item in our tax on the price build-up. And so initially we were quite opposed to it. We had even requested that a sunset clause, if any, should be communicated again if international, market factors were dictating otherwise. Were we going to do something about it? But even before implementation would roll out, I think was it last week Friday or something, I was with one of your sister networks where I had decried the possibility of international market prices going up, and then again the taxes also coming to add to it, and thereby a double jeopardy for the Ghanaian consumer. Thankfully, you have a government in place that would listen, and so what they have done is to say that, look, we are not going to apply that now because tensions are still very high in the Middle East. Mind you, it is not just a war between Iran and Israel. You are dealing with a region that has one of the busiest canals as far as the oil trade is concerned. I'm talking of the Straits of Hormuz. Over 25% of the world's oil cargo will go through that canal. So what that means is that once you have the bombs flying, once anything could happen anywhere, anybody could drop any missile anywhere, you may not get the supply that you will require, the 101 million barrels daily supply. About 25 million barrels could be affected, and that would mean less supply whilst demand continues to remain constant. So therefore, the tendency for prices to go up remain high, and I'm not surprised that crude already has done some $12 on a barrel in the face of these tensions. Mind you, anytime crude goes up, it has a 5-day, 6-day, 1-week lag that it reflects on the prices of finished products. And so when we made that argument on Friday, we were minded by the fact that international market price for petrol diesel had not risen yet. But once the base product out of which the refineries would convert to petrol, diesel, kero, LNG, LPG, all of them is concerned, then you would have a situation where prices of finished products could also go up. And so we put that notice out there. The government listened. It decided that it wasn't going to implement the 1 Ghana cedi any longer. Right. That for us is a listening government, and I would say this morning, if you were to hold elections this morning, I would vote for President John Dramani Mahama again for just listening to Ghanaians on this one. Stakeholder engagements continue to unfold. We'll continue to engage the ministry And as Richmond has already indicated, our pushback on the One Ghana levy is not that it should not be collected or taxes are bad necessarily, but we are of a different persuasion that indeed there are structural issues with the system that is creating the debts. And so if you don't fix those issues, then you are looking at a situation where you are just pouring water into a leaking basket. The basket is already not going to be full, and then it's also leaking badly. So we have suggested that the issues that generate the losses, i.e. the debts, i.e. transmission losses, i.e. the low revenue that we generate, and when the revenues are even generated, application of it. You recall a program called the Cash Waterfall Mechanism had been introduced to pay off IPPs when they put in generational efforts. Unfortunately, you had an ECG which, prior to the coming into office of the current Energy Minister, John Jinapong, was operating 82 different accounts. And you wonder what kind of, I don't know whether set up 82 different accounts for one organization that could just import containers at will without traceability, nor accountability, nor need for these containers. So you need to fix these structural issues. You would need to, as it were, remove the corrupt tendencies within the power sector. And once that is done, and you are able to come to a point where the debts are no longer accruing, then we would have been of the persuasion that, okay, there's a debt that needs to be paid. Is it 10 pesos that would probably be able to clean it up, and how long would that take? 20 pesos? That conversation could also be had. So I'm happy that, again, the minister is also taking steps, consolidating these 82 accounts into one or two accounts, out of which it can monitor and be able to pay IPPs. That is one fix. You wake up and today, 16th, you hear ECG would also be embarking on a nationwide revenue, mobilization or collection. They should focus a lot more on the bulk, users, a lot of whom would have meters that will run into several millions of Ghana cities that they will cannibalize at the end of, a period by paying tokens to, some persons that they choose to deal with. I think that if the minister would even show face by leading that ECG team to some of the homes or some of the companies, some of the industry, some of the places that owe heavily, a signal would have been sent that we are serious this time. We want to collect as much as we probably are putting out there. And when we collect these monies, we should have a transparent dashboard that allows us to say that, look, 7 IPPs, we've been able to clear what they generated for this month. The debt we have outstanding with them is up to 2 billion. Of that, we've been able to pay about 200 million US out of it. That way, you will be working in a way that gives confidence to all of us that it is not business as usual. But what pertained in the past is simply a criminal enterprise, and merely collecting money to feed that criminal enterprise is unsustainable. And that has been our position all this while. And I reiterate that for the president listening, for the finance minister agreeing, for the energy minister agreeing, GRA agreeing, to postpone the 1 cedi collection today is victory for, should I say, reasonable or wise thinking, sound judgment, because things could have escalated. They haven't as yet. Government doesn't want to add to the pressures that we already felt. Again, if you had a situation where international market prices go up and you add the 1 Ghana cedi, you would simply have wiped out every gain that the government would have made over the past 5 months. And so, as a listening government, I think it has done the right thing. And on this, I give them a thumbs up completely.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Again, that is Duncan Amo, Executive Director of COPEC. They're sharing his insights. And he says that the structural issues certainly need to be looked at, whilst government also monitors the geopolitical situation as it unfolds. And he's talking about what happens in ECG, procurement issues, corruption, and the like. And that's something that we're also exploring this morning on the program. I'll read out some of your comments, a few quick ones, and then I'll go to Doc here for his perspective on this unfolding issue. Just a few of the messages. And again, thank you so much for all of you. Michael Wazinga says, Hamza has really cooked this morning. I don't know what meal you're referring to, but I think that's what the young ones say. They say you're cooking. All right. Also, this one, okay, I'll have to redact this one. Numesi Nenena says, we must be forthright in our discussion regarding, okay, redacted here, their tactics is to divert attention from the press conference made by the Attorney General concerning NSS made on Friday. Okay, a few more. Prudential Livingston says, anyone who lived in Ghana during the NPP 8-year rule, yet listened to them, is absolutely vacuous and suffering from cockroach audacity. All right, so do keep them coming, and we'll read out as many as we're able to before we go. This one is quite interesting. I think Andrew will be keen on this one. It says, I don't agree with the attempt to detach the governing body from party. That's not right. The party is the entity that wins elections, and the flag bearer of the winning party is given the mandate to form the administrative body and the assumed president of the republic. And that's why, okay, I'll redact this one as well. But he says that you can't really extricate the government from the party. They are one and the same. That's the view of Anthony Kujo. And for those of you sending in messages, do keep them coming. Yeah, Fabrice says that when we talk about the people causing the energy sector debts, we cannot take away the NDC government. He says the NDC government burdened Ghanaians with almost $4 billion with the cost of unused power generated by the take or pay power plants agreement. And I think we've seen a few of these comments talking about take or pay. And the NBP government collateralized ESLA to reduce such nuisance debt. What did you expect the past government to pay the inherited energy sector debt of $2.5 with? All right, let me come to Doc here. We've had a few analogies this morning. There's been audacious cockroach. We've heard about the bats. I think Duncan Amwa made a comment about monkey dealings. I don't know which animal you are going to introduce, Doc, into the conversation, but it's good to see you again. And some very interesting perspectives there. Would you say that this is a listening government? We have geopolitical tensions brewing, which have an effect on the cost of fuel. Government now says that let's put a pause on that levy so that we can monitor what is going on. Or would you say that this is a trial and error approach?
All right, Helen, good morning once again to you. Good morning to your crew members. Good morning to Hamza. Good morning to Lawyer. And our viewers and social media followers. You know, last week I made a strong point, and I said that based on the figures that I have and the calculations, you know, and the data available to me, I feel strongly that government cannot go ahead, you know, with the 1 cedi, you know, levy. And it was based purely on the statistics, and that it was going to disadvantage consumers. And you see, you are coming from an angle where you've gained economically, and as it were, the gains that we are seeing now, you know, should be translated into improving the living standards of the average Ghanaian. So government needed to appeal to transport owners, drivers, and associations to, you know, reduce fares, right? Which they did. But, you know, even though, you know, the theory behind the 1 cedi levy sounds so appealing and good, actually it was going to impose another increases in fares. You know, so it is good that the government, has taken that decision, and I feel that they shouldn't go back there.
So this should not return?
No.
You agree with the NPP, or shall I say the minority caucus in Parliament, that this should just be completely scrapped off the table?
You see, I'll come to the NPP letter and the NDC's explanations, you know, to this debate. But I feel that, you see, there are various openings that the current government, can get certain, monies from to be able to take care of the energy sector, levy, all right, so that it doesn't really burden, Ghanaians. And I think that last week I had a discussion with Eduji, so probably he may want to take it up and then deal with it. Now, you see, this debate about the accusation from, the opposition, the largest opposition party, the NPP, and then the ruling NDC government, for me, is unfortunate. Whether it is in defense or whether it is by accusation, it sounds disappointing to me.
On both sides, you say?
Both sides. Okay, because the reason why I'm saying that is that this thing didn't start today, all right? And if it didn't start today, who is to be blamed? And who is to probably say that I have done the right thing or the wrong thing? For me, posterity, just as some people will blame MPP and others will blame the NDC, I think that the dynamics in terms of debate will not change when it gets to the turn of posterity. It will still be the same until we do something about it. You see, I took something from lawyers' discussion, and this is what I have to say. Earlier on, we were asking me about which animal.
Yes, we have had bats,
yeah,
cockroach, and then monkey.
Okusie Eduoku.
Okusie?
Eduoku.
Which animal is that?
Okusie friends a rat.
Is that bush? Okusie is bush rat.
Yes, bush rat. The actual Ashanti name is Okusie Eduoku.
I see.
Se oti kwantimpo mu a woni mirika no wakukuduro. In other words, a rat that is living within the neighborhood, must have enough of courage or speed as an asset. You understand? Or I should explain further.
I think you have to put some more flesh on the bones.
Oh yes, so I'm doing that.
All right.
Okay. So earlier on I've said that I am very much disappointed in both parties. Okay. What does it mean? When you visit the animal kingdom, one of the wisest animals in terms of security is a rat. And you've never hunted before, so you didn't understand it. You see, in construction, the rat has a bedroom, the rat has a living room, the rat has a storeroom, and even the loo, the rat constructs a loo. Any hunter will testify to what I'm saying. And when the rat is living, it closes its doors. The rat has a security opening that in case of danger, that is where to run from.
Doc.
Yes. So you see, we have been burdened, our economy has been burdened by external shocks and external factors. And we are not doing anything about it since the days of Nkrumah. All right? So, if I am a government and I come to power and one other government has a stock of money in there and I'm in trouble, do you expect me to sit in a can? You see, Sabada Wanchaya, Yansha Makramanya Day, and Kayen. I'm talking parables.
You are.
Yes.
And I hope you decode that for us. Are you talking specifically then about monies that were put into ESLA?
Yes,
and what the NPP did when they came with it? Okay.
Okay. So because, you see, that was one of the explanations that they gave. All right. I feel that the ESLA bond was unfortunate because I was one of the leadership of the DDEP. You understand? Okay. So I understand the ESLA bond, and I feel that, the dynamics of it was very unfortunate to start with. I will not support it, and I will not defend it in any way. All right. Okay. But what I feel is that, you see, until governments, including the current government and governments to come, are able to deal with the effects of external factors, we will still be where we are. You see, let me move a bit and look at oil productions in Ghana, crude oil production in Ghana. 3 key, companies are involved: Jubilee, Sankofa Ginyame, and then the 10. All right. Together, they make over 48 million barrels. What do we see? Where do they go? What is the local content implementation and enforcement in there? Do we even have a vibrant refinery in Ghana? You understand? So, if you don't deal with it, you will sit here next year, you talk about the same thing. Let's talk about gas production. Gas production. Among these 3 companies, Sankofa Ginyame produce over 50%. Over 50%. What benefit are we getting? What benefits? That opposition will say that, government in power will say that. You see, I feel that we cannot continue in this line of political excuses and debates without solutions.
You say that takes away from the substance of what exactly that it is we're discussing. But how do we ignore? You say you started off by saying the largest opposition party, that's the NPP, they've waded into the conversation. We know the role of any opposition, of any minority. Theirs is to keep government on its toes. So when they speak, you will expect that Ghanaians are, reading in between the lines, are also reading whatever communiques, press conferences to infer from that whether or not government is on the right track. With this particular press release, do you think it does justice to the role of what a minority or opposition should be doing, keeping government on its toes? Or do you see or infer from that release that there is some politicking happening there?
You see, I want to stay within the education bit of this discussion.
Okay.
All right. And I feel that whatever my presentation is, viewers will understand the need for Ghana to move from, where we are now into a more productive, position. And governments in power, as well as the opposition party, whom probably would inherit the reins of this country in future, should also know that the debate ongoing goes beyond exchange of words. They need to act. Act. What is the state of Tema Oil Refinery? Are we not talking about energy? Are we not talking about increases in fuel levy? Are we not talking about how to probably generate gas to support our energy sector and to produce electricity for us? Are we not talking about generating natural gas in such a way that it will reduce, the government burden of importing natural gas? And if you have it in abundance in Ghana, at the Sankofa oil field, why can't we come up with a policy? Why can't we develop some kind of technology? Why can't we invest so that Sankofa Ginyame, production will benefit this country? Do we enjoy exchanging hard currency to go and bring natural gas from abroad? Is that what we want to do as a country? You see, that's why I said that I don't want to go into the politics of it. I mean, the politics of it belongs to the politicians.
But you're a political strategist. Maybe you'll seek to explain to us what exactly is happening.
From the strategic point, no, it's part of my points.
Okay.
All right. Yes. So that's why earlier on I said that we need to probably come together as a country, to put some of these policies together to ensure that we generate, even if not 100%, when it comes to gas, production in this country, whatever we are producing is enough, to help ECG or the independent power producers or whoever, in charge, to be able to generate enough gas, feed the plants that we have, to produce electricity, and even at a reduced cost. Then we know that governments are performing. All right? But if it will end up that, even yesterday, what I heard was amazing. Over $200 million importation of chicken and chicken products. Why? You understand? So that is where, for me, I think that there should be that level of pragmatism, pragmatic planning.
Thank you, Doc, for that.
To have certain...
Just 30 seconds for me,
Yes,
Doc.
certain discussions done, certain policies, churn out in such a way that all the various sectors, it's not just the energy sector alone, agriculture, all right, manufacturing. I was just reading something about the German, economy and the structure that it takes. 4 key areas, and they are all dominated in they have dominance in the manufacturing sector.
Certainly, Doc.
All right. So if we cannot do that, I mean, please give me 1 minute or so. Okay. Please, I just want to make a very important point.
Right.
You listen to the government's statistician and the data that he put out there. All right. Obviously, the data itself doesn't matter. But for me, how, policy can come out of it, in terms of agric, and all that. Why would Ghana's economic sector, be dominated, by the service? And when you look at the difference between the service sector performance and the manufacturing sector and agric sector, it was so huge.
That's something we can certainly table for another day's discussion, because it's something that needs attention. But Doc, thank you so much for that perspective. I will just come back again to Andrew and to Hamza just for a minute bite each as we close out on this particular conversation on the suspension of the levy.
So it's good news. Like I said earlier in the year, if there's a time for all of us as Ghanaians to come together to build this country, to create that right society where all of our individual ambitions can find a place in, then it's now. You understand? So I'll call on the minority. They should remember that they are Ghanaians first, and that the place for the competitive side of the politics will come. Right now, you don't need to, when you say you're opposition, it doesn't matter, you oppose for opposing sake, because you are castigating government for relieving Ghanaians. So if you were in government, you would have added to a burden like they did. You understand? Let us create a system where at all times we put the interest of the country first as against our parochial interests. Let's create that one Ghana where we can find the opportunity of reclaiming our place as the Black Star of Africa. After all, in their time, they left Mahama with no fuel. When Mahama was leaving, he left them about 6 months of fuel to do it. So let's come together and sing from the same hymn sheet, and let's create that one strong Ghana. Thank you.
One strong Ghana. Hamza, just 1 minute for me, please, and we'll wrap up.
Well, like my brother has indicated, when they were faced with external factors, their policy measure, you remember, was the introduction of taxes like e-levy. Yeah. They argued then that without e-levy, the economy would collapse. And you know that no matter the kind of modeling you do, e-levy undoubtedly had an economic impact on the Ghanaian people, because the incidence of that tax was directly on the Ghanaian people. The reverse is what is happening now. The government has anticipated a situation where what is happening in Iran and Israel could have an effect on our economic fundamentals. Instead of imposing a levy in their bid to take charge of the economic impact that it will have on us, the government has rather proposed repealing, or if you like, suspending rather, a levy that the government was planning to introduce. So clearly, the reverse is what is happening, because what that simply means is that the burden that would have gone to the ordinary people in terms of the incidence of the one city introduction would now be borne by government, and the people would be burden-free. But it is important for me to respond briefly.
Yes, please. And Hamza, just in 30 seconds.
I hope I can do so in 30
just in 30
seconds. Because
seconds,
I
please.
listen to Doctor. You see, I respect Doc a lot. So it becomes a bit difficult for me to be seen to be arguing with him when he takes certain positions. But, Doc, there is a marked departure when it comes to the vision of this government and that of the new Patriotic Party. When you made references to the Otobo gas processing plant and asserted that it should be enough for us to power generation plants, I don't think that it is fair to the facts. Because even at the time we're introducing it, we established it. His Excellency President Mahama and Mills. You remember, our annual demand for LPG was in the region about 240,000. Now, what we needed, what Atuabo was going to process was about 180,000. So there was a short in supply. We were hoping that the new government would have done the necessary investments even in the liquefied petroleum gas sector to be able to make up for this shortfall. And for 8 years, they failed to do that. It had to take this government again. Not long ago, I'm sure you monitored, the minister responsible for finance and energy put together a committee to consider the establishment of the second phase of another gas processing plant for Ghana, intended to be able to respond to many of these issues that you are raising red flags about. Because this government has already shown that commitment. It's working, and I can assure you, Doc, that this government will leave a legacy.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And what a morning it has been. A good start to the week. And of course, with the suspension of this levy, we'll all be looking to what other alternatives being preferred by government. I'm sure we'll have another opportunity, Hamza, to expand on this conversation as we look towards the future. But it's been another fantastic morning. Many thanks to Doc. Doc, thank you so much for your time this morning, as well as Andrew, Hamza. We had Duncan Amo of COPEC on the line, also Richmond Roxon of the Ministry of Energy and Green Transition. We go on a quick break. When we come back, there's a lot more right here on New Day. Don't forget, we're still cashing out this morning. It is *439#. We'll see you soon.